Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The room was packed, the murmur of bidding rising like a distant roar. John Carter, a single father in his 30s, stood there, his shoulders hunched, his hands shaking. He had lost his wife a few years earlier, and life had left him with only his 2 children and a crushing debt. Now, to pay his creditors, he had to sell his labor in a public auction of temporary contracts. The cold, indifferent stares of the participants weighed on him. He was compared to a mere commodity, a black man, exhausted, scarred by hardship. With each swing of the hammer, John felt his heart clench. He wanted to disappear, but he had to fight to survive, for his children. As a cruel voice commented on his lack of education and apparent naivety, John bowed his head, holding back tears. He thought of his 8-year-old daughter, sleeping at their neighbor's house, and his 6-year-old son waiting for him at home with dinner prepared by John himself. All he wanted was to provide a decent future for his family. Then, amid mocking laughter and sarcastic murmurs, a hand was raised. A deep voice announced, "I bid." All eyes turned to the stranger, an elegant man in a perfectly tailored dark suit, with an air of both power and mystery. Billionaire Alexander Whitmore had just placed his first bid. John's heart leaped. No one in this room had ever shown him such consideration. Whitmore didn't seem to see a slave to poverty or a simple, desperate worker, he saw a man. A man worthy of respect. The hammer finally fell, sealing John's fate. But this time, it wasn't humiliation, it was opportunity. An opportunity that would change his life and the lives of his children forever. John Carter stood in front of the large auction room, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. He clutched a small bag containing his few personal belongings, as if he could still maintain his dignity amidst this eager crowd. Every step he took sounded like a warning. Here, he was a nobody, and every glance seemed to reduce him to a mere object. Since his wife's death, everything around him seemed to be falling apart. His job as a waiter was no longer enough to pay the rent, and his debts were piling up at a frightening rate. Creditors had found a cruel way to bring him to his knees, a service auction, where over-indebted men and women were literally put up for sale, to work for those who offered the most. John felt his heart clench as he saw the other participants. Some tried to smile bravely, others bowed their heads in humiliation and resignation. He took a deep breath, thinking of his children. His daughter, Lily, and his son, Ethan, were counting on him. He couldn't afford to break down here. The room was noisy. Bidders openly commented on the candidate's appearance and skills. Too slow, not educated enough, blank stare. Each word was a stab in the back. John felt tears welling up, but he fought them back. He had to hold on. He had to survive. Suddenly, a dry laugh sounded behind him, and a man sitting in the front row leaned over to whisper, "No one will want him. He looks lost for years." John bowed his head, clenching his fists. He thought about what he'd been through, the nights spent watching over his children, the silent sacrifices he'd made. How could they judge a father by his looks and his poverty? And as the first hammer was about to fall, a calm and confident voice rose in the room, "I bid." All eyes turned to the speaker. An elegant man with an impassive face but piercing eyes raised his hand confidently. It was the beginning of a radical change. John didn't know it yet, but this moment would transform his life forever. The shadow of poverty would gradually dissipate, thanks to an unexpected billionaire who saw in him something no one else did, a man worthy of respect and opportunity. John Carter still couldn't believe it. Moments before, he'd been on the brink of total humiliation, reduced to a mere object in the crowded auction room. And now, a billionaire had snatched him from that nightmare with a single bid. After the auction ended, he was led into a side room, where Alexander Whitmore was waiting for him. The man was tall, elegant, and wore a tailored suit that seemed to exude power and control. His light gray eyes stared at John with a calm, almost analytical intensity. "John Carter, is that you?" Whitmore asked calmly. John nodded, his throat tight. He forced himself to answer. Yes, sir. Thank you, I suppose. Whitmore gave a small smile. Call me Alexander. I don't like unnecessary formalities. John felt a strange warmth fill him. This man didn't judge him for his poverty, his life scars, or his constant fatigue. On the contrary, he seemed curious, interested in the man behind the exterior. I followed you for a while, Whitmore continued. Not for the sale, but for your perseverance. You stood there, despite what others thought of you. That interests me. John's mouth fell open. No one had ever seen him like this. No one had ever noticed his resilience, nor the strength he hid behind his tired eyes. Whitmore gestured toward an armchair. Have a seat. Let's talk. I want to understand who you really are, and how I can help you. As John sat down, he felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Was this real? Was it a trap or a chance to escape this downward spiral? Alexander's eyes, filled with certainty and calm, dispelled some of his doubts. You have children, don't you? Alexander asked. Just remembering it made John feel a pang. Yes, a daughter and a son. Good, Alexander said, nodding. Whatever we do will be for them. I'm not trying to change you, John. I just want to give you the opportunity you deserve. For the first time in a long time, John felt a glimmer of hope. This unexpected encounter might just be the beginning of something bigger, something that would allow him to protect and raise his children without the constant fear of failure. The next morning, John Carter awoke with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Meeting Alexander Whitmore the day before had shaken his worldview. For the first time in years, he felt that life could offer him something more than a simple struggle for survival. At exactly 9 a.m., he arrived at Alexander's luxurious office, located in one of the city's most prestigious skyscrapers. The walls were decorated with contemporary paintings and corporate trophies, but the atmosphere remained surprisingly warm. Alexander greeted him with a smile. You're punctual. I like that, he said, motioning for her to sit down. John nodded, still intimidated by the opulence surrounding him. Thank you, sir. Sorry, Alexander. You can just tell me Alexander. We will work together, not just as employer and employee, the billionaire replied. He placed a file in front of John. This is your first assignment. Don't worry, it's not an impossible task, but it will require persistence and honesty. John took the folder, his hands shaking. Inside were the details of a charity project, a small local business struggling to stay open, struggling families, and a plan to revive their business. Alexander explained, I want you to manage this project. You'll meet with the owners, understand their needs, and help me develop a plan to save them. I trust you. John felt his heart race. This was exactly the kind of challenge that could change his life. And most importantly, it would allow him to prove that he was capable of more than the world thought. But I've never directed anything of this magnitude, he murmured. Alexander smiled. I'm not asking you to be able to do everything. I'm asking you to show your heart and determination. The rest, we'll learn together. For the first time in a long time, John felt a mixture of confidence and hope. This mission wasn't just a job, it was a chance to rebuild his life and the lives of his children. As he left the office, the sun shone over the city like a symbol of a new beginning. John knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with Alexander by his side, he felt he could finally transform his destiny, and that of his family. John Carter woke before dawn, his heart pounding with a strange combination of nervousness and excitement. Today he would meet with the owners of the company Alexander Whitmore wanted to save. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel invisible to the world. The drive to the neighborhood where the company was located was a revelation. The streets were bustling, but some storefronts were boarded up, the facades dull, and the residents looked tired. John felt a pang in his heart as he realized that these people, like him, had been left behind. When he arrived in front of the small textile shop, he took a deep breath and knocked on the door. A woman in her 50s opened the door, her eyes filled with suspicion. Hello, are you John? she asked. Yes, ma'am, I'm here to, he began, but the landlady, Margaret, crossed her arms and looked at him suspiciously. So tell me, who sent you and why should I listen to you? John honestly explained Alexander's intention, to save his company, restart production, and protect jobs in the community. He spoke simply, but every word carried the sincerity and determination he had inherited from his trials. Margaret stared at him for a long time, then her expression softened. You have a certain fire in your eyes. Very well, John. Let's show me what you can do. The next few days were intense. John traveled the city, meeting with suppliers, customers, and employees. Each encounter was a challenge, some were wary, others discouraged, but little by little, trust began to build. John used what he knew about real life, his resilience, patience, and ability to listen, to convince people to work together. One evening, exhausted but satisfied, he thought about his children. He knew he was acting not just for himself, but for their future. The project was taking shape, and every small success was a personal victory. As he left the shop that evening, he looked up and saw the sky tinged with orange and purple. For the first time in a long time, John felt that his life was about to change, and that this chance offered by Alexander Whitmore wasn't just a miracle, it was the beginning of a rebirth. In the following weeks, John Carter felt that his work on Alexander Whitmore's project was beginning to bear fruit. The first customers were returning to Margaret's shop, and the employees seemed motivated for the first time in years. But the road to success was far from straightforward. One morning, while he was organizing a meeting with suppliers, John received a disturbing call. Some residents and shopkeepers in the area were skeptical and refused to cooperate. Why should we change our ways for someone we barely know? One of them asked him, his voice full of suspicion. John felt the tension rising. He knew these initial resistances were natural, but he wasn't prepared for the open defiance of some people. He took a deep breath, thought back to the trials he had gone through in his own life and the stakes for his children. He couldn't give up. He decided to personally visit the skeptical residents to listen to their concerns and needs. Each encounter was a challenge, some rebuffed him, others tested him with sarcasm. But John, true to his nature, always responded with respect, patience, and sincerity. Gradually, his determination and honesty began to undermine the initial mistrust. One day, when he came home late from his tour, he found a message from Alexander. John, I'm proud of your perseverance. Obstacles aren't walls, they're stepping stones. Keep moving forward. Alexander. These words resonated with him as a vital encouragement. John realized that Alexander's support was not only financial, but also moral. He wasn't just managing a project, he was embodying hope for an entire community. That evening, as he gazed at the sky from the window of his modest bedroom, John felt a new flame ignite within him. The obstacles were numerous, but each small step forward proved to him that resilience and determination could transform fear and doubt into success. He finally understood that this unexpected opportunity was not just about saving a business, but about rebuilding his own life and that of his family. And he was ready to take on every challenge that came his way. After weeks of tireless effort, John Carter was finally beginning to see the fruits of his labor. Margaret's small shop had regained its vitality, customers were returning, orders were pouring in, and the employees seemed more motivated than ever before. Every smile on the town's faces made him feel like he was breathing lighter air, as if the entire town were coming back to life. One morning, Margaret greeted him with a broad smile and a small stack of letters. John, look at these, she said, handing him the documents. These are messages of gratitude and support from our customers. Some have even offered to help us with their skills or promote our shop. You've done an incredible job. John read each letter, and a deep emotion overwhelmed him. For the first time in a long time, he felt valued, recognized not only for his work, but also for his perseverance and integrity. His efforts to overcome mistrust and obstacles had paid off. Shortly after, Alexander Whitmore dropped by the shop unannounced. He watched the scene silently before turning to John with a satisfied smile. You see, John? It's not just the money or the project that matters. It's how you inspire others, how you mobilize them. You've turned a challenge into an opportunity. John lowered his eyes slightly, ashamed to receive so much praise. I could never have done it alone. Your guidance and confidence made all the difference. Alexander placed a hand on his shoulder. And that's exactly what I wanted to show you. True potential isn't measured by circumstances, but by how you respond to challenges. From that day on, John's reputation grew in the neighborhood. Residents began to see him not as a struggling father, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. Even skeptics began to recognize his determination and offer their support. For John, every small success became a personal victory and a promise to his children. He was no longer simply a surviving father, he was becoming a role model, a man capable of transforming his life despite difficulties. As he left the shop that evening, the setting sun cast a golden light over the street. John sensed this was only the beginning. With Alexander by his side and his own unwavering will, he knew he could accomplish even more for himself, his children, and the entire community. Everything finally seemed to be going in the right direction for John Carter. Margaret's shop was thriving, the townspeople were beginning to trust her initiatives, and John's children, Lily and Ethan, were smiling again. But the apparent calm didn't last. One morning, as he was about to head to the shop, John received a stressed call from Margaret. "John, you need to come immediately. There's a problem, an investor is challenging some of the decisions you've made. He's threatening to shut everything down." John's heart sank. After all the effort they'd put in, it could all come crashing down in a matter of minutes. He didn't yet know how difficult this new obstacle would be. Arriving there, he met the man in question, an influential, arrogant, and skeptical local investor named Richard Holloway. "Carter, you don't know what you're doing. These decisions will ruin the business, and you alone are responsible," he said contemptuously. John felt his anger rising, but he forced himself to remain calm. Every word had to be carefully considered. "Mr. Holloway, I understand your concerns," he said confidently. "But we've already started to see positive results. Customers are returning, employees are motivated, and the community is supporting this project." Holloway sneered. "Positive results? It's only a temporary illusion. You're an amateur, Carter." Just then, Alexander Whitmore arrived. His footsteps echoed through the shop, and all eyes turned to him. "Richard, I think you underestimate John," Alexander said in a calm but authoritative voice. "He's proven his worth at every stage of this project. If you still have doubts, we can review all the data and results together." Holloway stepped back slightly, surprised by the billionaire's confidence. But he didn't give up easily. "I want to see concrete evidence before we continue. Otherwise, the project will be suspended." John felt a mixture of stress and determination. This was the moment to prove that he was not just a lucky man saved from a humiliating auction, but a leader capable of turning a difficult situation into a success. Over the next few days, John worked tirelessly to gather all the evidence, figures, and testimonies from employees and customers. Every detail had to be flawless. And when he finally presented the file to Holloway and Alexander, the skeptics were forced to acknowledge the effectiveness of his work. This challenge had been a decisive test. John understood that even in the darkest moments, his perseverance and Alexander's support could transform threats into opportunities. And for the first time, he felt that he was no longer just a survivor, but a true builder of his own destiny. In the following weeks, John Carter's name began to circulate far beyond the neighborhood. Thanks to the tangible results of his work and his exemplary project management, other local entrepreneurs and even the media were taking an interest in him. For John, it was a whole new world. One morning, Alexander Whitmore called him into his office. "John, I've received several offers to extend your skills to other projects. Local businesses want you to help them turn their businesses around. I think you're ready." John, surprised and honored, felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Me, doing this? Alexander, I've never had any training to handle so much responsibility." Alexander smiled. "You have the best training there is, life and experience. You know how to listen, motivate, and inspire people. You transformed this neighborhood when no one believed you could. You're ready to expand your impact. Thus began a new phase in John's life. He visited various businesses, listening to the owners' needs, proposing solutions, and mobilizing teams. Everywhere he went, he inspired respect and trust. The same determination he had used to save Margaret's shop now allowed him to transform several businesses and improve the lives of many families. One evening, as he was returning home, his children were eagerly waiting for him. Lily ran to him, her arms around his neck. "Dad, you've become a hero," she exclaimed. Ethan nodded with a broad smile. "Yes, Dad, we're proud of you." John felt an intense emotion rise within him. Everything he did, every effort, every obstacle he overcame, had meaning. He was no longer just a father who survived, he had become a living example of perseverance and hope. Alexander, watching his progress from afar, sent him a message. "John, you are living proof that resilience can change the world. Keep it up." For John, these words were more precious than any salary or award. Every recognition, every smile, and every success confirmed that his life was transforming, and that the path he had chosen with Alexander was the key to a better future for him and his children. Despite all his recent successes, John Carter knew that every victory had its challenges. While preparing a project for another struggling company, an unexpected situation arose. A large corporation, headed by an influential man named Victor Langford, announced its intention to buy out several small local businesses, including those John had helped revive. The announcement shook John. If Victor succeeded, all his work could disappear, and the residents he had inspired could find themselves without hope once again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Alexander Whitmore supported him and provided the resources he needed to defend his projects and the community. John went to the meeting with Victor Langford, determined to protect what he had built. Langford, arrogant and self-assured, stared at him and said, "Carter, you think you can stand up to a man like me? These companies will soon be mine." John took a deep breath, recalling each moment he had overcome humiliation, obstacles, and mistrust. "These businesses aren't just about profits for you, Mr. Langford. They're about families, jobs, and hope for this community. I won't let you take them without a fight." The confrontation was intense. Victor Langford tried to use his influence, but John, with his experience and supported by Alexander, managed to present solid evidence, demonstrate the commitment of the residents and demonstrate the social and economic value of these local businesses. At the end of the meeting, Langford, surprised by John's determination and intelligence, stepped back. "All right, Carter. You've won this time, but know that I never forget." John felt a tremendous sense of release. He had just defended his community and proven, once again, that perseverance and courage can triumph even against the most powerful opponents. Back home, surrounded by Lily and Ethan, he realized the magnitude of his journey, from a man humiliated at auction to one capable of protecting and inspiring an entire neighborhood. Alexander's support, his own resilience, and his love for his children had transformed his life irreversibly. That night, John knew that nothing and no one could stop him from building a better future for himself and his family. A few months had passed since the ordeal with Victor Langford. Margaret's shop and the other businesses John had helped were thriving like never before. The small community that had once viewed him with suspicion now saw him as a leader, a man capable of turning adversity into opportunity. One morning, Alexander Whitmore invited him to his office for a special meeting. This time, it wasn't a project, but a public recognition. "John," Alexander said with a smile, "it's time the world knew what you've accomplished. I want to organize an event to celebrate your efforts and show local residents and businesses that courage and determination can change the lives of an entire community." John felt his heart pound. He never imagined his name would be associated with something so big. I don't know what to say," he whispered. Alexander placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need words. Your actions speak for you." On the day of the event, the room was filled with residents, business owners, media, and friends who had come to celebrate John's achievement. Margaret took the stage and shared the story of this single father who dared to believe in the possibility of change despite humiliation and obstacles. The applause echoed, and John felt tears well up. Lily and Ethan, standing beside him, looked at him with admiration and pride. "Dad, you're our hero," Lily said with a beaming smile. John addressed the crowd, his voice trembling but firm. "A few months ago, I stood here as a broken, humiliated, and hopeless man. Today, thanks to Alexander's perseverance, community, and support, we have proven that hope and courage can transform a life. And most importantly, I want to show my children that no matter the challenges, it is always possible to get back up and build something better." Alexander joined him on stage, and together they raised their hands in victory and unity. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. For John Carter, this moment symbolized much more than just financial or professional success. It embodied rebirth, recognition, and security for his family. The dark days of humiliation at auction were now a thing of the past. That evening, walking home with Lily and Ethan, John realized his life had been completely transformed. He was no longer just a surviving father, he was a symbol of courage, resilience, and triumph over adversity. And for the first time in a long time, he felt that the future was entirely in his hands, bright, promising, and filled with hope.